actually speaking to you from a very interesting location right now. Uh, right now, I am sitting in Lower Parel in Mumbai, and if you read the news, it is one of the hardest hit areas of coronavirus. So, uh, contrary to popular belief or the perception which goes throughout the news, life around us is actually very normal. And this particular experience actually made me rethink this whole concept of you know uh, selling goods to people, how to interact with customers, how to interact with clients. So with that uh, thought in mind, I decided that I should actually share these ideas with you. So here is my presentation, and I actually decided to discuss beyond design thinking because the thought which lingered in my mind was that design thinking might be a redundant phrase. You cannot obviously design without thinking. So what is design and what is thinking? If we look at these two words separately, then maybe we have an understanding of design process which is useful for you as future businessmen or existing businessmen. So let's look at what design at its core is. So the example of uh, the great German hyperinflation comes in mind. It was right after World War II. So please feel free to chime in. Can anybody remember anything after looking at any of these two images? Okay, so I will move on. So what happened was these two currencies actually represent the worst case of hyperinflation in human history. So the note on the left side is of 1 million billion pengo. That was the Hungarian currency. And the note on the right side is of 20 million mark. And the inflation in these two situations was so bad that workers were being paid twice a day, and the wages they would earn in the morning would be worthless by evening. So they had to get their wage and rush to buy bread. And why this particular example stood out, because money is potentially the most powerful product ever designed. You cannot imagine your life without money. And even money is not absolutely ironclad in absence of the substance that supports it. These currencies lost trust of people, so they became worthless in a matter of weeks. And same is true for every business proposition. If it is not backed by substance, if it is not backed by solid research and user input, it becomes worthless to users, buyers, and investors very fast. So this is possibly the most extreme case I know where there was a complete lack of thought behind execution. And it happened because the governments decided to simply print more money as labor's wages rather than expecting service in return. So from extreme cases to normal cases, we already know that, sometimes a badly designed cabinet from IKEA can kill a dozen children across USA. A badly designed car forces a giant like Volkswagen to cheat on test results. And sometimes, as it happens, a corporation like Nestle could face 40 years of demonization because they forgot to relay a very simple instruction with their baby formula that please use with distilled water. So with that, the question is, what exactly is design thinking process, the design process? So there are 5 key steps into it, and I'm pretty sure most of you have seen this diagram whenever you searched about design thinking. And first step is obviously empathizing with people, understanding people, interviewing them, talking to them, sometimes just observing them. And for once stepping out from that business mind and getting into a friend mind, because we are not actually predators looking at a prey. We are looking at a service provider to a person who will give their earnings to us in return of the service we will provide. So empathy, in fact, becomes the key trait of any successful business. Once we have uh, interacted with people enough, once we have validated their our concern, once we have understood what they exactly need and what they will pay for, then we move on to definition of a problem. So a lot of times you might have heard this misstatement that design is about problem solving. So it cannot be more wrong. Problem solving is a very, very small part of the entire design process. And sometimes we have to let problems go also, because first and foremost, design is a process to address somebody's needs. It is never just about problem solving. That's why it becomes very important that we define the goal of any design project very clearly after understanding people. So moving on to definition. After definition, we move on to testing process. So testing is not just after we have made something. Testing is also about the notions we have built. So let's say we observe a group of 100 people and we build a notion, being businessmen or designers or technologists. We have built a notion. We have to validate that notion. Our ideas need to be tested as well. We need to get into debates. We need to get into arguments. We need to put the theory out before we actually act on it. And once we are done with that, then we move on to what we know as the drawing board. We start ideating, and there are two approaches. We can either converge into one single idea, we fixate on it, and then we try to refine it over and over and over again. Or we go for a generic approach where we generate 100, 200 ideas altogether, and without any restrictions about technology, cultural significance, viability, and then we filter out the most viable ideas. So both approaches have their merits and demerits, but those ideas give us a generic form, a basic direction where to go. And once we have solidified on best of the idea among the whole lot, then we develop that idea into concepts. And the concepts which stand the scrutiny of basically logic and viability, we move on to prototype them. And I will explain all of these steps one by one. And eventually the final test, we always test our concepts with end users. So if a concept works, doesn't work, we go back to talking to people why it didn't work. But if it does, then we have a viable product at hand, and we may go ahead with production, or at least first batch production, to test it with a larger user group. And we can actually call it market, or we can call it a pre-market domain. So empathization is, in fact, it has been an overused word for last 5 to 10 years in industry. And it became very apparent because there was a long duration in global industry that everyone was just thinking in terms of breakthrough technology, breakthrough science, breakthrough engineering. We were always talking about efficiency, cost, price, and features. We forgot what people actually need. So the failure rate of startups started going up. Eventually, people understood that it's the user who decides and who drives the market. It's the collective behavior of users who actually can create or demolish a market. And that's when people realized that, and it was also the nascent stage of service industry, and that's when users got their podium back. Their opinions started mattering again, and industry wide researchers shifted towards understanding user behavior and uh, formalized their approach to collect data, qualitative and quantitative, from test focus groups or test subjects. So the first and foremost goal is to understand their needs and how do you address them. And in fact, this became the very backbone of what we know today as gig economy. So in gig economy, and as you might know, that even the unicorns like Uber, Lyft, Swiggy, Zomato, none of these companies are actually making profit. And I'm pretty sure that you are also aware of the almost apparent demise of Oyo. So these all of these concepts, they ballooned so fast and they scaled up so fast because they focused on acquiring more users first. Their goal was not to make profit first, but their goal was to have the highest possible number of loyal regular users first. So I'm pretty sure most of them will survive, and unless there is a managerial disaster or some investment scandal or some financial irregularities, which actually was the case in case of WeWork, most of these companies will eventually survive because they have tried to understand users for their entire existence from day one. And the most important is that they continuously improvise themselves by validating their findings through surveys, testing offers in random locations, and talking to authorities, talking to random people, talking to non-users, most importantly. And all of them have one characteristic in common. They are, as I used the phrase earlier, they are not predators studying their prey. They are basically a co-worker or a co-researcher or a co-explorer waiting to listen to users' opinions. So empathy begins with just patiently listening to people about a particular subject that is of your interest. Now, listening to people tells us which instinct or which driving factor our design, our product, or our service will cater to. Will it cater to the survival of products? And of course, right now we are locked down in our homes. So of course, practically everything that is being offered to us is catering to our survival instincts. Once survival is ensured, then comes luxury, then comes plenitude, hence some products which appeal to the growth driving factor of people. After growth, something is missing, something which is behavioral, something which is niche, something which is for unique of the unique user groups, the most expensive ones, the premium customers, the customers who don't like to waste time, specialized people who like customizations on their products. We are appealing to the propagation driving factor of those people. And finally, there are people who actually have moved on from all the basics and they are looking for something just for themselves, something which reflects their personality. Consumers, the people which we can say are brand loyalists, or the people who are technology loyalists, or people who are material loyalists, because that artifact they are investing in is identifying with them. So those type of consumers are actually looking for objects which help them actualize themselves and express themselves. These are individual people who want the whole brand for themselves. Now, definition of a design problem. How do we define a problem? There are 4 layers to it. So first of all, nothing is perpetual except utilities. So we need to look for a scenario where our product exists in its full glory. Inside that scenario, there are contexts. So for example, scenario is post information age. Inside this scenario, the context is cookware or connected home appliances or vehicles. Vehicles would be in context of mobility actually. And inside that context, there will be a set of premises we would like to target: shared or personal ownership, connected or not connected, high tech or low tech. And inside that premise, somewhere there is gold. That is the individual need of enough people, which we are going to address. So, whenever we are defining a design, businesses, let's say mission and vision, we are looking at these four things layer by layer, that our business is relevant in this scenario, it functions best in this context, we hold these premises before delivering our goods and services, and these are the needs we hope to address through our products. Now, definition, that was the multi-layer statement, which could be the foundation of any design-driven business. Now, when it comes to actually defining the activities further, what exactly do we need to do? So first things first, our needs to be broken down into problem statements. And of course, we cannot have the whole cake. Sometimes we do, but more in real world, it happens rarely. So we actually break a user group's needs into sub problems, and we prioritize them, which problem to solve first. So this prioritization gives us a clear pathway to reach something called the minimum viable product, or MVP. So we define a key problem and other problems become its sub problems, and we solve the key problem first. For example, when it comes to food delivery services, delivering food on time, that becomes the key problem. How do we solve this? Basically, establishing the commute between a restaurant and a user's home. Now, problems around it would be: how do I customize the menu? How do I reduce delivery time? Do I, take associates who only have motorbikes, or can I take associates who have bicycles? Can I, and eventually third or fourth layer could be that, can I, partner with Uber or Ola so that their drivers can deliver food for me when they are not actually serving riders? After clarification of the problem, our search parameters become very clear, and we actually, yes, there is a question. Okay. So after we have searched, clarified all the major problems, central problems, sub problems, then our parameters become so clear that we can actually look for exactly what kind of experts we need to support our business idea. Are there patents in this domain already, or are we looking for a new technological innovation? Is there literature available for this particular problem solution? What are the benchmarks, if there are any, to solve this problem? And what kind of user groups am I looking for? So of course, if I'm designing a two-wheeler which is electric, I'm not looking for people who are physically challenged. Same way, when it comes to internal search, then we know what kind of individuals we need to talk to, or what kind of demographics we need to corner for our business. And once our criteria are clear, and once we have all the desk information ready, then we can plan our systemic exploration, that is basically interacting with people, observing them, observing their behaviors, and in order to empathize with them and pinpoint at the need they will most likely pay for. Now, ideation phase. Ideation phase, and that's where, in fact, I differ from most of the people who actually talk in the domain of design thinking. That people apparently somehow this notion of using 1 or 2 day hackathons to generate radical ideas is getting promoted as the universal model of coming up with good ideas. It actually is a very inefficient approach. It is inefficient because it discards most of the existing information, and it lets the intuition take the driving wheel for the most crucial part of design process. So if we were to use intuition, then we would not need designers or managers at all as businessmen. Intuition can only be used after that intuition is backed by several years of experience of successes and, most important, failures. If we have always succeeded in our endeavors, then we will never know what happens when somebody is failed. And I don't need to give you any clear named examples, but you have seen a lot of people who are not able to lead their communities very well when it comes to managing the crisis caused by this epidemic. Worldwide, there are world leaders who are actually leading their countries phenomenally, and there are world leaders who actually are losing their approval ratings because of this, because they have not experienced failure yet. It is their proving ground. And same is true for businesses. The sign of a great CEO is not to lead a company when it was trading at its highest, but sign of a great CEO is who took charge of the company when it was about to drop. So with that thought in mind, let me break down ideation process for you. So first and foremost, we need to absorb as much information as we can before we pick up the pencil. So we need to listen to the users, we need to see their behavior, we need to see the world around us for inspirations. We need to use all the senses, because design is not just visual, it deals with other four senses as well. And most important of all, we have to use experiences of people and not just ourselves. Once we have absorbed information to the brim, where we can't absorb information anymore and we feel compelled to act, the first action has to be to document this information through writing, drawing, doodles. Nobody is expecting you to write a research document at this stage. Nobody is expecting you to become the great artist at this stage. The only thing somebody is expecting from you is that, do you have a structured map of this reality in your head? And do you have all the relevant information you need to actually initiate a new product? And most important of all, as I actually mentioned in the earlier slide, you have to create significant chunks of this information. Once expression is done, once you have written your concept note, once you have written all the ideas down, and once you have broken them up, then comes the idea of visualization. So that's why you see in boardrooms, there are glass walls filled with marker sketches, and there are posters and there are charts, because everyone is trying to visualize the information in is their own way. A visual summary is the most powerful tool a businessman can have. And of course, it's a staple tool for every designer. That's how designers can process a very large amount of information in a very short time, because they are trained to create visual summaries. And once those visualizations are done, contextualization happens through some of the very popular design research tools. For example, storytelling or storyboarding, we also know this process with a different name. Its written version or graphical version is also known as the customer journey map. So we basically try to visualize how a customer will interact with our solution from beginning to end. Now, assigning characters to users is basically called personas. So we try to imagine what kind of people are going to use our product and what their personas will be, what other things they will prefer, and where else their income goes, where else their loyalties lie. Experiences are positive and negative. It's basically the feedback from people. We try to always hope that everyone has a positive experience with our product, but we have to always remain open to whatever negative experiences people have, because if we don't have that, we will never know how to improvise on our solutions. Dimensionalization is basically the idea to set parameters of performance, more popularly known as performance indicators of a product or an object or a service. In what direction this service behaves best, in what direction the service behaves worst. first. Packaging, the brand, the identity, the appearance, the organizational culture, the language which is used to interact with the customer. That is all part of the packaging of a possible solution. And of course, whatever succeeds remains part of our business, and whatever fails goes into the refinement cycle, which is the new ideation cycle altogether. Next is prototype. So I have one anecdote to share with you. So in last 10 years, I have worked with more than 106 industrial design and design consulting projects overall. Some were engineering, some were product design, some were industrial design, some were graphic design, some were identities. And I remember a couple of times I could see a business failing the moment I'm signing the contract, because the entrepreneur was not inclined to actually understand the user. The entrepreneur was actually inclined to nab the first investment as fast as possible. For that entrepreneur, the goal was not to satisfy the need of a user. In many cases, he did not even know who his user is going to be. But his only goal was, can we go through a quick pitch presentation as fast as possible so that I can present it to a possible investor. So for that person, it was not an individual who needed a more comfortable chair or who needed a more robust communication device, but it was basically a person who could possibly invest some money, some seed money in a new business. So needless to say that after working with so many, in fact, more than 20 startups and more than 100 projects, needless to say that every startup I came across with, which had a first investor in mind and not the end user, those startups actually don't exist today. And there are very few. So, and I learned from these failures very early on that my goal is with my end user and my buyer, investors will follow. Until my test user is satisfied, it's futile to actually chase investors, because they will ask the same questions only from a money perspective. So that's why a prototype becomes more and more important. And the photograph I'm showing you is actually a classic example. It is not mine, it's a representative image. So it is about a very sophisticated software design, but to test with users, you don't even have to make a digital mock-up. A paper prototype does just fine. What more important is, can users interact with your idea in real time and tell you what goes right with them, what goes wrong. This, of course, does not work with an investor. Testing. So, of course, testing is a tedious job. People are unwilling to try new things. So we need models of persuasion. We need to actually make testing strategy a part of our initial expenditure, because without testing, we don't have a market. There are two ways to test: going after individual users, asking them targeted questions, taking their opinions through interviews. And there are large scale tests if you can afford them. They are generally reserved after you have scored your round A, or at least some seed funding, so that people can in large numbers validate your ideas. Now, this is one step which actually has not been mentioned in any of the design thinking models you find on the internet or wherever you go. Scaling up. Somehow, I don't know why this part is being missed, because a viable business almost always rely upon a scale-up strategy. Once you have designed something that works, fine. Now, how to scale it up? I can actually, I will show you in next slide that I have made a product at home which could deal with the mask requirements. But I know for a fact that I cannot scale up that idea, because it is 3D printed, and 3D printing is not a scalable technology yet. So when you are starting a business and not a design service, then of course scale is the one thing that needs to be in your mind every time you scrutinize an idea or a concept. Every time you ask questions from users, if their answers drive you in a direction where a possible solution will hinder scaling, then innovation is required. Innovation which will allow you to scale things which people have not been able to scale before. So I can give you a very simple thought experiment. Remove your cell phone from your day-to-day life for 5 hours and then list the services which are simply not scalable in absence of mobile technology. And I'm pretty sure you will surprise yourself with the length of that list. So again, users in fact carve out, to summarize the idea of scale, it's a group of users which actually constitutes a market. Market drives technology. If the group of users is large enough, it can fund the innovation, which means technology innovation can be funded. Technology drives the material innovation, which is a more expensive part of innovation. And once materials are introduced, new materials are introduced, and I'm also talking about software where you can replace material with, you can say, suits or platforms. So once new platforms or materials are introduced into a market, of course, new processes are going to spin off, and those spin-offs, in fact, drive business into new direction. So that is the summary of scale. And this chart actually summarizes where design helps a new business. So as you can see, even before engineering design begins for any product or service, design research and design thinking has to take place so that you know your users well. You know how much they will pay for your idea. You know how you will charge them for your idea. You know what kind of culture your idea will create. You know geographically where you should be situated to offer your idea. And as you can see, design gets involved in every stage of the process. So to summarize all of this, I offer a very simple framework to my friends and colleagues. I don't call them clients because, of course, that means I'm detached with their business. I don't like people. So when I work with them, I simply use this simple acronym, that is ACT. So we absorb as much information as we can. We create as many solutions as possible in reality, and we test the hell out of them until enough people say this is what we are looking for. Now, to summarize, it's a paraphrasal of a very famous quote. Why design drives future businesses? It is because design creates behavior. And behavior, when followed by enough people, transforms itself into a culture. For example, iPhones. And once a culture takes shape, it defines the future. So with that, some of the examples and the mask I was talking about, as you can see on the left side of the screen. So the moment lockdown was began and masks in public spaces became mandatory. And as I told you, I'm living in the worst hit area of Mumbai. So instead of buying a surgical mask, which could be used by a nurse or a doctor in near future, should things go bad direction, I have a 3D printer at my disposal. So I decided to print one at home. And because I have designed and printed this mask, I know it is not a scalable solution. It is good for me and myself only. The other two projects are actually done under my supervision. One actually is the central product which you see is a water flask. It actually was done by one of my juniors. And this product actually is everything that can go right with industrial design. This product does not care about technology, about science. It cares about one simple fact, that people need to drink 2.5 liters of water during their 8-hour working cycle, and they need to consume it in chunks of 350 ml at a time. And people have to be forced to drink water, otherwise they forget, because thirst is one of the most ignored bodily need in our day-to-day routine. So this dripping flask simply starts spilling water after the glass is full until the user drinks it. So user slowly become more and more cautious about their water intake. So this actually conditions people through negative reinforcement about drinking right amount of water periodically, not over drinking it, not under drinking it, just the right amount at the right time. And next is basically a multispectral microscope, which is currently under development. It is also done under my supervision. One of my ex-students is actually developing it right now. Now, I thank you for your attention, and to summarize this whole presentation, design is thinking made visible. That's why I don't use the term design thinking, I use design driven business. And once your thinking is visible, you always know which decisions will cost you how much as a business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deepak Singh. It was really a great presentation. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, the attendees side.
Sure.
So one question is from Janki Ben.
Yeah.
So she has a question that test karte time, sir, how many times, what are the things that you should take care of?
So test karte time, comfortable in Hindi or English?
Maybe she had asked the question in Hindi, so if you can go on in Hindi.
Okay. So Janki Ben, right?
Yeah.
So जानकी बेन, टेस्टिंग से सबसे पहले जरूरत होती है कि आपका आइडिया, आपको एक बार तो यह इंश्योर करना है कि आपका आइडिया ओरिजिनल है क्या. ठीक है, अगर आइडिया ओरिजिनल है तो बिफोर, इससे पहले आप लोगों को आइडिया दिखाएं, सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप उस आइडिया को प्रोटेक्ट कीजिए. आप सबसे पहले एक पेटेंट एप्लीकेशन लिखिए, और सबसे पहले अगर ओरिजिनल टेक्नोलॉजी है तो पेटेंट एप्लीकेशन, और डेरिवेटिव टेक्नोलॉजी है तो डिजाइन रजिस्ट्रेशन. एक बार आपने अपने आइडिया को सिक्योर कर लिया, उसके बाद सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप यूजर्स को इंटिमिडेट ना करें. आप अपना आइडिया यूजर्स को दीजिए और पीछे हो जाइए. आप बस उनको यूज करने दीजिए, एंड उनकी परमिशन से आप उनको यूज करते हुए रिकॉर्ड कर सकते हैं तो कीजिए, नोट्स बनाने हैं नोट्स बनाइए, लेकिन यूजर्स को अपने तरीके से एक्ट करने की कोशिश मत कीजिए, उनको ड्राइव मत कीजिए. ठीक है, आप जस्ट ऑब्जर्व कीजिए. सो डिड दैट आंसर द क्वेश्चन?
Yeah, perfect. So we have a couple of questions, so we have to go a bit fast.
Yeah. So Mr. Sahil Zaveri का question मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ. Why exactly 3D printing is not scalable? Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Mr. Sahil, can you hear me? Please type yes.
Yeah, Sahil is there.
Okay, so Mr. Sahil, 3D printing is a slow process. So when I printed this mask, it was a 6-hour print. So if you were to spend 6 hours on every unit of your product, naturally it cannot compete with its injection molded competition. Next question is from Mr. Manoj Waghela. It is about how to proceed from POC to MVP.
Yeah.
Great question. Absolutely great question, and answer will be useful to every single one of you. So proof of concept is when an engineer says this works. Now this proof of concept has to be packaged into something usable. After proof of concept, you need to have a look and feel model of your product exactly the way it will look like. Okay. And once you have that exact model, then you actually invest into the components of the proof of concept to be miniaturized or packaged well inside the exact replica of your final product. That replica needs to be tested, and then you need to make multiple copies of it. Those copies are your minimum viable product. Okay.
So, one question we have. Hello. Yeah, are we done with the answer of that question?
Proof of concept say minimum viable.
So one question we have is how to explain your idea when it is of technology.
Okay, so it's a great saying that if you cannot explain your idea to a 5-year-old, you will have a very hard time finding an investor. Okay. So when you are explaining your idea, create 3 pitches. One is a 30-second pitch, one is a 2-minute pitch, and one is a full 15-minute discussion. So For example, if I were to explain to you Swiggy, it's उसके प्रीकर्सर पहले से है. आप किसी भी जान पहचान के रेस्टोरेंट को फोन करके खाना मंगा सकते थे, ठीक है. लेकिन अगर उसकी मैं 5 सेकंड पेज की बात करूं तो ये थी कि कॉल करने की जरूरत नहीं है, सॉफ्टवेयर यूज करो, खाना घर आएगा. सो focus not on technology but what is being done with that technology. हमें ये नहीं पूछना है, बताना है लोगों को कि मेरे पास कौन सा टेक्नोलॉजी है. हमें लोगों को ये बताना है, इन्वेस्टर्स को, कि इस टेक्नोलॉजी से हम क्या कर रहे हैं और कोई कंपटीशन में है या नहीं है. ओके, सो नेक्स्ट इज व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन वैलिडेशन एंड पेटेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन. Okay, so Vishwaji, design validation is when users approve of your design कि हाँ ये हमारे लिए काम करता है. Patent registration is basically the formal process जिसमें आप गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के पोर्टल पे अपना डिजिटल सिग्नेचर यूज करके एक पेटेंट लॉयर के थ्रू अपने प्रोडक्ट का टेक्नोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट रजिस्टर करना है. डिजाइन वैलिडेशन इज यूज सिनेरियो, पेटेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन इज टेक्नोलॉजीज प्रोटेक्शन. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, जिगर आप शॉर्टलिस्ट कर रहे हैं या मैं बोलते चले जाऊं?
नहीं, you can take it.
Okay, so next question is from Mr. Pranav. What can we do to protect service related ideas? Good question. So service related ideas have always been contested, and they are very, very hard to, first of all, it is very hard to come up with an original service related idea. Rule 43 applies of internet. If you can think of it, it exists somewhere. So, but still, as a process, you can file for patents. Okay. Just the way you can protect algorithms and service related ideas generally, that's why you will see that there is so fierce competition in service industry, because somebody tweaks one stage of the service and it's a new idea altogether. And service industry is so sensitive at every stage that minor tweak can differentiate, make a difference between, let's say, which one, a successful startup and a failed startup. So to protect service related ideas, the most prudent step is actually to deploy it and go aggressive with your user base. So, Nikki ji, yes, we will get back to you once I'm done with all the written questions. Just give us 2 minutes. So, explanation of ideas is done. Pranav ji, how to choose between different ideas for my startup? Pranav ji, your question is how to choose between different ideas for my startup and what factors to keep in mind. Viability. Okay. So viability is one thing you need to keep in mind. What can you do with your local resources fast? Startup is about speed. How fast can you land in the market? Once you are done, you can actually engage more people to take care of an established vertical and then move on to the next idea. So look for local viability, least amount of dependencies. Okay, Pranav ji? Okay. Mr. Kunal Vyas, how do we keep ourselves on the course corrected throughout the cycle of design thinking? Let go of intuition every now and then. Look for more data. And if it doesn't exist, do not hesitate from sponsoring research studies from reliable people. Even if you have to hire agencies, please do so. Intuition will only take you so far. Course correction will only happen through repeated feedback from your users.